Sean, you're fired. Good afternoon. Next up, we have Paragon Advanced, Peter Shippen.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Peter Shippen. I'm the founder of a company called Paragon Advanced. Just a bit of background on myself. Experienced CEO and board member in public and private companies. In 2017, sold a business that I'd started called Redwood Asset Management, a Canadian company, to a much larger firm called Purpose Investments. I'm on the board of Seven Aces. Seven Aces was a PE takeout in 2020, and I'm currently chairman of a company called Canadian Gold Corp. Britannia Life Sciences is a company that recently we sold a testing business in UK cosmetics in January. I think it's notable, for one, because it was a takeout at 11 times EBITDA, and that was to a non-strategic buyer. And the story with Britannia Life Sciences is after I left Purpose, I got into the world of, I wanted to get on the other side of compliance. So after being in finance for 20 years and feeling very heavily compliant, I thought to myself, how can we get on the opposite side of that trade? And I started really researching testing, inspection and compliance companies. So Paragon Advanced is born out of that research. So Paragon Advanced is a technology-enabled global lab platform offering testing to mining companies. We're going public in May 2025 on CIBO Canada. We're in the midst right now, it's quite difficult to do from a hotel room, of closing a $10 million financing to accelerate our lab rollout throughout the Americas and into Europe. While we offer all kinds of traditional mining testing, our really key point of differentiation is around implementing new mining technology into the lab environment and really focusing on new technology to improve turnaround times for our clients, but also provide better data and better outcomes. The tool that we're using to compete with incumbents that are kind of large multinationals is a technology called PhotonAssay. For us, we feel like for investors, we offer a picks and shovels approach to the mining industry. It's probably no secret to any of you that the gold price has been recently as high as $3,400. Because of that, financings have really spiked in natural resource companies. And if you see a junior company or a mid-cap company raising $5 million, $10 million, generally about 10 cents on the dollar of that will come into the testing and testing space. So there's a direct correlation between the financings that are going on in the market right now and the ability for our business to benefit from that. So we feel like we've got significant leverage to the mining cycle without taking on exploration risk. We currently operate 3 ISO labs, ISO accredited labs in North America. One's actually here in Nevada. We've got 30 people working in Reno. It's a significant operation. And right now, we're getting our PhotonAssay machine set up there. We'll be the first and only for the foreseeable future PhotonAssay unit in the United States. So just a bit of background on for those who are not very familiar with mining testing. But essentially mining companies go out and they drill their properties to prove out or develop or mine their resources. So typically the testing method that's used is a technique for gold is called fire assay. Fire assay is a 2,000-plus-year-old technology, which involves essentially setting fire to rock using chemicals and figuring out what's left afterwards, and that's kind of your gold content. We also offer geochemical analysis, which is analyzing all the other elements that go along with that. So we offer these services currently, but for us, where our key point of differentiation is about introducing new technology. For about 20 years, I've been hearing the same thing from mining companies. Things are going great. Our results are very, very promising, but we're waiting on our lab for results. And in the junior mining space, even mid-caps, even for large companies, it's very difficult to make decisions when you're waiting weeks and weeks for your results. when you think about it, and I was speaking with a drilling company the other day, you know, a significant part of a drilling budget is waiting for results, sitting idle, paying people for doing nothing just because you're waiting for results from a lab. So we think that there's a great opportunity. So when we heard this a number of times and people complaining about the lack of turnaround times, we engaged with a number of mining executives, largely in Canada, and we're really benefited from their experience and some of their frustrations. And a lot of these mining executives, I can name a few, Eric Sprott, Crescat Capital, and others, ended up investing in our business because they saw the problem that we were solving for. We started researching new technologies. We sought better economics in the traditional lab model and improved margins with new technology. And we moved quickly when we identified these technologies to get a dominant position and block out other companies from using it in various areas. So the key things that we heard were slow turnaround times, testing methods that were destructive, so they actually ended up destroying the sample. The fact that small sample sizes, you know, there was often scenarios where people would do testing regimes and then end up with a small sample size that didn't reflect the overall ore body. And just that manual processes, certain things happen when you have people involved and mistakes can get made. So we found this technology called PhotonAssay. PhotonAssay is a non-destructive, it's faster, more cost-efficient assay method that is looking to replace fire assay globally. The larger, more representative sample, especially in markets like Nevada, like British Columbia, like Western Australia, where you've got deposits that are quite what we call nuggety or coarse gold, it gives you a much better representation of what you're actually pulling out of the ground. So this technology's been around since 2017. It was commercialized in Australia. It's very widely adopted in many mining circles, but interestingly, the first machine only came to North America in 2023. That was after a couple of years of pre-work that we did. So in hearing these mining executives in terms of learning about their pain points, we found that this technology was the right thing to deploy. And you can see it from the utilization of the machines and just how the growth in sample volumes. To give you a sense, a PhotonAssay machine is about 3 shipping containers in size, weighs 54 tons. It's lead lined. It's got a small kind of nuclear reactor in the middle that irradiates a sample and gives you your results in a couple of minutes. But, pardon me, the technology is proven. We get asked a lot by technical folks around the idea that, is it compliant? It's compliant with all the major reports. In Canada, we call it 43101. In Australia, it's called JORC. Here in the United States, it's called SK 1300. So there's been over 10 million samples done on this technique. Major companies like Barrick, Agnico Eagle, and others have used it. And really head-to-head, you can see the key benefits. You know, much quicker turnaround time, much larger sample size, some significant ESG benefits. And the thing that we talk to technical people about, and the people in the mining world just adore, is that a sample is not destroyed when you're doing your testing. So if you think about that for a moment, if you're a junior mining company or a mid-sized mining company, you're doing this drilling, you're trying to prove out a resource, because ultimately you want one of the larger companies to buy you. And if you're destroying your samples along the way, doing due diligence on an acquisition can actually be quite difficult. One of our key advisors told us that, you know, picking through a core shack and seeing that rock has just been halved and quartered and is where because this non-destructive method, you can just pull samples off the shelf, retest them, get the exact same result, and do due diligence very, very quickly. Get very comfortable with what you're buying. So the interesting thing is that all the major companies now are using PhotonAssay in one way or another. I think one of the key things about it is to replace fire assay alone, you would need 600 machines, PhotonAssay machines, to replace fire assay. And by this time next year, there's only going to be 60 on the planet. We'll be operating 12 of those, and we're the only company focused right now on setting up PhotonAssay labs in commercial lab locations. Everyone else is really focused on going to the mine site with an individual customer. But I think it actually sounds, it's worth hearing from one of the users of this technology to hear how they use it. Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, it's when I had it, somehow it's just turned into an image, right?
Do we want to? Sometimes if we go to the next one, that skipped it, right?
Okay. Companies throughout the world, the largest mining companies are using this and finding great utility in using PhotonAssay. For us, it's the tip of the spear in our client acquisition strategy. Going and offering these key benefits to various mining companies is allowing us to be disruptive in a very competitive space because we're offering a technology that people want and a technology that people want and largely can't get access to. I think the supply demand of these machines is something that is really a game changer for us, and it's a real competitive advantage because there's just not enough supply of these machines. The supply of PhotonAssay will remain in structural deficit, we believe, for at least a decade or more. Currently, we're operating in Hamilton, Ontario, Surrey, BC, and I mentioned we have a significant lab operation in Sparks, Nevada, with about 30 people. In that lab, we offer fire assay, geochemical analysis, as well as setting up the U.S.'s first commercial PhotonAssay unit. One thing I'd say is our deployment schedule with this capital we've just raised is very aggressive. We want to get our machines out in the market over the next 14 to 16 months. Because of our aggressive rollout plan and our partnership with the technology owner, which is an ASX-listed company called Chrysos, we have this ability to have an economic moat. So as we roll through this rapid deployment of PhotonAssay machines, we've been able to secure regional exclusivity. So that allows us to be first in a market with, let's call it a 2-year exclusivity, and the ability to get the early adopters, move through that adoption phase that we think is actually going to be much shorter now because it's got a significant track record in Australia, now in North America, but also companies like Barrick have decided to shift all of their global mining testing over to PhotonAssay, which in itself adds to this supply-demand dynamic because they're going to take 20 to 25% of the global supply out of the market. We also have a de-risked asset-light strategy where the machines themselves we don't pay for. We pay a per use, a per sample fee, almost like a royalty to Chrysos. And because of our partnership with them, the idea that for the first 6 months, we won't have any mandatory minimum payments on these machines. So it allows us to get these machines out in the market with significant protections and a real economic moat around these businesses in a de-risked fashion. We're seeing meaningful organic customer growth right now, and it really is around the fact that companies that couldn't really access capital markets are now being able to. And the minute a junior or mid-cap company raises that money, they want to get that into the ground as quickly as possible, and that really benefits our business. As we look into new markets like Chile and Peru and into Europe, we're seeing a significant opportunity for acquisition and partnerships. I want to walk you through kind of the magic of this business, and you can change your assumptions here, but I just wanted to go through the unit economics of one of these machines. So I'll say this, our existing business in Reno, we estimate will generate about $2.5 million US of EBITDA in the next 12 months. That's without a PhotonAssay machine in there. A PhotonAssay machine at 80% utilization with an approximate $20 price per test. You make a little bit of money on sample prep, generates significant monthly revenue. When you take out your costs, which is largely the royalty that we would pay to Chrysos Corporation, the cost of the sample jar, if you swing by our booth, we've got a sample jar there that we can show you and walk you through the process a little bit more. And you take away all of our overheads, it's conceivable that you could make $400,000 to $500,000 a month per machine. We've got 12 of these machines that we're rolling out, 3 that are currently positioned, with the third one being commissioned as we speak. So you can see with 12 machines, the cash flow potential for this business is really significant, and we expect over the next 12 months to generate about $10 million of EBITDA. So when you take those unit economics and put them into our slide, into our kind of corporate model, you can see that over the model on the left is ultimately a 3-year scaling to 60% utilization per machine. That's how we get our $10 million EBITDA number. On the right, it's a more aggressive scaling where we think we can get to 80% utilization over 18 months. As I mentioned, we've just recently completed a financing. We've got fully diluted about 28 million shares outstanding. We did a raise at $1.75 Canadian a share. We are planning to go public shortly and trading on Cboe Canada. To give you an example just of how these companies trade, and one of the things we suffer from in Canada is there's not a lot of testing businesses. There's a number that have gone public recently in the US at multi-billion-dollar market caps. But the one thing I'll say about these testing businesses is because testing, inspection, compliance, the compliance component, these customers don't generally have a choice of whether they can test or choose to test or not. Ultimately, what you're doing is competing with the other people for almost business that is preordained. So the thing that I wanted to point to here is just that the trading multiples of these businesses are quite robust because it's a pretty significant market opportunity. Also, the idea that compliance as a share of overall markets is growing faster than the growth of the markets themselves. In cosmetics, where we came from, we were seeing that the growth rate of cosmetics was, say, 8% per year, but the compliance costs within that sector were growing at twice that rate, and we see that as well in mining. So to sum up, we're setting up commercial laboratories with a hub and spoke model, championing new technologies. We have great leverage to the mining cycle. We have new technology that's in demand and growing. It's capacity constrained, and the global mining companies are moving to it. And we have significant EBITDA potential over the next 12 months. I can pause there if there's any questions. That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit, is that these machines are quite large. They are have a componentry that takes 18 to 24 months to build. So right now, Chrysos Corporation manufactures about 20 machines per annum. They have not indicated that they're going to increase that production. So even if you map out like a 20 machine increase per year, we're looking at 20 years before you're making a significant impact in the overall demand for fire assay. At the same time, that total addressable market is growing significantly for 2 reasons. One is you've got mining companies being able to raise more money because of the metals prices being high. The second thing is that this machine, the fire assay market is generally a gold market. We estimate that it takes 600 machines to replace fire assay. This machine tests for gold, silver, copper. So your addressable market's already larger. And over the next 12 months, we're talking about adding lead, zinc, uranium, and other elements to this too. So as the machines are rolling out, your total addressable market's growing in a technology that is actually quite difficult to produce because they're so large and the componentry requires 18 to 24 months to build. So even when there's an announcement that there's more machines being built, we have 2 years of visibility before that. Yes, sir. Chrysos? So heavily protected through a global patent portfolio. This technology was created in Australia through a national research council there. And it's really the only technology. There's no real challenger technology, and the fine tuning that's occurred even since the technology was commercialized is meaningful. So the technology itself, you send your sample into the machine, it gets irradiated with high-powered photon X-rays, and the way you measure gold, but all the elements, is by you essentially create a nuclear process, and you measure the gamma radiation that comes off the sample as it goes from an excited state to a normal state. So that's why you get significant accuracy. But we've done a significant amount of research over how we use this technology amongst others. We've got a couple of other technology agreements that we're looking to publicize shortly that takes PhotonAssay as just one step and augments it with a number of other interesting and really useful technologies. No, we have 10-year contracts and everything's kind of set in there. Yeah. Yeah, so we operate these machines in our own sites. It costs about $300,000 to $500,000 to set up a lab. So as I said, it's very asset light. But we have service level agreements with Chrysos that requires a minimum 95% uptime. And they have 2 dedicated engineers for each of our machines at each site. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, it's dependent on the deployment. So in some parts of the world, it's defined by a number of kilometers. In other parts of the world, it's more regional, where you're actually crossing borders and getting regional exclusivity. In really significant mining markets, you're not going to get the entire country, but you might get a portion of a region. So like in Peru, as an example, you could have exclusivity around Lima, but you wouldn't have the entire country. It's all on all future deployments. Yeah, but I'll give you an example. We were the first kind of in BC, British Columbia, and one thing I've learned about being in this business now for a couple of years is that being first is the most important thing. You can be pretty, you can be smart, you can do a lot of things, but being first is really important. So having that, what I call an economic moat around that business is really, really meaningful. So, yeah. Yeah, Barrick's a great one because they did about 3 years of work with their partner Newmont, another massive mining company, and decided about a year ago that they would announce moving all of their testing onto PhotonAssay. So they were already using the technology at some of their mine sites, But now they've done a deal with, frankly, one of our competitors, although we don't view them as a direct competitor because they're really focused on mine site deployments, where they're taking kind of 15 machines and deploying them to Barrick sites. But I think the thing that's amazing is just that Barrick and Newmont did such a lot of work to validate the technology. I'm out of time, but I've got some room in my one-on-ones if anyone wants to sit down and talk more about it. Thank you very much for your time.